The first few terms that we're going to go over are line, shape, and pattern. And I know you guys have heard of these words before, but I want to quickly review the definition of each and the difference between them. Our first element of art is line. You can define a line as a continuous mark or a dot made on a surface. Think of how you make a line. You start with a dot, and then you continuously drag your pencil or whatever media you are using across the surface. With line, we have many different kinds. You have straight lines, curvy lines, zigzag lines, and so on and so forth. Most pieces of artwork contain line, or at least started with a line. Artists will typically use their lines to help portray their subject matter, while others use it to help show movement or texture. Shape is our second element of art. Think of shape as an enclosed area of space. You start off with a line, and when that line comes back around and connects to itself, you have a shape. Shapes help artists create more complexity in their drawings and paintings. They can also help them balance out their compositions. In addition to shape, we have two main types: your geometric shapes and your organic shapes. Think of geometric shapes as any shape with a name. Your circles, your squares, your triangles, your rectangles, all of those shapes that you study in your geometry unit in math class. Organic shapes are somewhat different though. They are basically any made-up shape. They're random blobs that you create on the fly. There are so many infinite number of organic shapes, we can't give them all a name, so we call them all organic. Now, a pattern is not an element of art. However, it is when you take an element of art and you repeat it over and over and over again. Think of circle, square, circle, square. You have repeated shapes, you create a pattern. You can do the same thing with any element of art. You can do it with lines, you can even do it with colors, you can do it with values. Any repetition of an element is considered a pattern. Many artists will use pattern to help create interest in their pieces of work, while others use pattern to create their entire piece of work. Obviously, Gustav Klimt did not get the social distancing memo here. The last term I would like to go over is Zentangle. Now, some of you guys may or may not have heard of this word before, so let's go over it just in case. Now, we all know what doodling is, and I bet you all of us have doodled at least once in our life. You're sitting there, somewhat bored in class, and your pencil just starts moving, and you create these doodles. The difference between a doodle, though, and a Zentangle is that a Zentangle is more of a meditative, mindful doodling. Most of the doodles that you do in class are probably out of boredom, but with Zentangle, it's more of a thoughtful doodle, where you're intentionally making patterns through using lines and shapes to create interesting pieces of work. Traditional Zentangles are done on square pieces of paper and called tiles, as you can see here. Now, Zentangles usually look very complex to people, and most people think, I can never draw that. But when you break down a Zentangle, you'll see it's almost like a puzzle, where you have these different sections or different pieces of the artwork made up of different types of pattern. But those patterns aren't as intimidating as they seem, because when you really break them down, you'll notice they're just made up of those simple lines and shapes. As Zentangles grew in popularity, they went from simple square tiles into more complex shapes. As you can see here, we have different objects filled with Zentangles, but all done in the same way, broken down into sections and filled with different types of pattern using basic lines and shapes.